Are you the person that I'm looking for? The person who actually finds it difficult in expressing his or her own needs and wants. Hence, you end up feeling uncomfortable and guilty for asking for what you need. As a result, you end up suffering in silence, which actually it can lead to feelings of frustration, anger, and even resentment. Or you're unable to set boundaries with other people in your life, hence you just accept every request they tell you to do for them, even when you don't want to do it, and you end up being overextending yourself, leading your life to stress and burnout, since you're afraid of being rejected or abandoned if you refuse their requests, leading to inability to say no, or even having low self-esteem and lack confidence in yourself. Hence you end up doubting your abilities, second-guessing your decisions, and constantly seeking for validations and approval from other people. Or maybe you're the person who encounters difficulty in resolving conflict, hence you can't address and resolve conflicts effectively. Therefore, you end up avoiding confrontation and struggle to express your feelings, leading to unresolved issues and tension in your relationships. Or are you the person that whereby most of your time you face anxiety and stress in social situations, since you are always worried about being judged, rejected, or criticized, leading to avoidance of situations that require assertiveness? Or are you the person who is actually facing difficulty in terms of making decisions confidently? Hence you struggle to weigh the pros and the cons of different options and may feel indecisive or anxious about consequences of your choices. Or even maybe you have professional challenges to the extent that even at the workplace, you struggle to communicate effectively with colleagues, supervisors, and clients, and you find it very difficult to ask for raise, promotions, or other opportunities, leading to stagnation in your career. Now listen, I truly get you. I know that you are actually facing various problems in so many areas of your life, such as personal relationships, work, and social interactions, which actually lead to anxiety, stress, low self-esteem, and difficulties in relationships and career. The problem that you are actually facing is just the lack of assertiveness in your life. But worry not, since the video contains much detailed information that will actually transform your life. This video was mainly dedicated to you, since the fact as to why you are still watching it, it means that you are actually facing one, two, or even more of the problems that you have been talking about since the beginning of the video. Now pay close attention and take notes from this point of the video, since this video was meant to educate you and not to entertain you. It contains much detailed information concerning the true meaning of assertiveness, why you find it very difficult to become assertive, the benefits of learning to communicate assertively, assertiveness and the 4 communication styles, and also how to be more assertive. In addition, it also contains a bonus content, and without wasting much of your time, allow me to begin. You first need to understand that even though assertive communication is the most common form of assertiveness, it is important to know that assertiveness is a very huge topic than a style of communication and speech. Assertiveness, it's actually living your life according to your values and not according to someone else's values. It's all about respecting yourself enough to be genuinely okay with whom you are and to live your life accordingly. This can be achieved through the following process. The first step that you can actually take and lead your life into being assertive, it's actually keeping your word. When you are actually deceiving other people by giving them wrong details, either by word of mouth, actions, or even documents, you not only decrease the trust and the good faith in you, but you undermine your own trust in yourself. As a result, it actually ruins your self-confidence and also self-image to other people. But when you make a choice to stick to your word and fulfilling all the promises and commitments, you form an assertive behavior whereby you will even be trustworthy since you never disappoint. The second step that you can actually make in order to lead your life into assertiveness, it's actually not second-guessing your decisions. When you make a reasonable decision and you spend hours, days, or even weeks mentally ruminating and second-guessing that decision, then you are actually communicating to your brain that the decision you made cannot be trusted. On the other hand, when you abstain from worrying and second-guessing, then you demonstrate confidence and believe in yourself. The third step that you can actually take in order to lead your life into assertiveness, it's actually following through on goals. Assertiveness is also being careful on the goals that you set in your life. This is because when you set a goal and you fail to follow through to completion of the goal, then you are trying to communicate to yourself that you are not accountable on what is important in your life. But when you set a smart goal and work hard to achieve on the goal on time, then actually it reinforces a powerful idea that you are competent, reliable, and also builds self-esteem in your life. The fourth step that can actually lead your life into being assertive, it's actually defending our own beliefs. In all instances of communication, you'll come across the following styles of communication commonly used. That's passive, aggressive, and passive-aggressive communication. For instance, when people communicate on topics such as politics, religions, or other strongly held beliefs, in most instances, people avoid expressing and defending their beliefs because they imagine conflict isn't worth it, or they end up irrationally aggressive and indirectly defending their beliefs. Hence, end up being disrespectful or inflexible in a way that they engage with people who differ. The fifth step that can actually lead your life into being more assertive, it's actually asking for and giving feedback. Most people are terrified in both instances of giving and receiving feedback, since they lack confidence and are afraid of how they will feel, such as shame and embarrassment, or how they will feel about them, such as anger and disappointment. But to someone who is assertive to their feedback, it is very important, since it will help in growth and new insights. In conclusion, being more assertive, it means going after what is important to you, even if it is hard to accomplish. It actually means that all decisions, actions, speeches, and goals are driven by your own values rather than passing whims and fears at the moment. But challenge arises whereby even as much as being assertive seems simple in explanation, you may find it very difficult to become more assertive in terms of action. This actually raises the question, why is it so hard to be more assertive? You see, most people find it very difficult to communicate assertively due to various reasons, such as being afraid of how we or others might feel as a result of anger, guilt, anxious, or even disappointment. Even though using any of these less optimal styles may help you to avoid conflict or difficult feelings in short term, they usually lead to negative results in a long term. Once we communicate passively, since we are afraid that others may think badly of us or even judge us when we express what we really want, all this is done in order to avoid the drama, the guilt that will go along when we make the choice of standing up for what we want. In this case, we feel chronically dissatisfied with ourselves that we can't stand up for what we want or believe, hence leading to increase in low self-confidence and poor self-esteem. Another instance where being more assertive seems difficult to adhere, it's when we communicate in an aggressive tone in order to put others down and seem to have sense of power, confidence, and elevates our fears and insecurities. In this instance, we become socially isolated, lonely, and even depressed because people in our lives are afraid to interact with us. In other instances, people communicate passive-aggressively with the aim of expressing our anger or hurt, but we are afraid of taking full responsibility for expressing it. In the passive-aggressive style, people lose trust and respect for us, and often chronically frustrated and irritated because of our flaky and responsibility avoidant behavior. On the other hand, when one chooses to be assertive, there is usually often temporary discomfort and blowback, and it's even worse when people in our lives aren't used to acting this way. This occurs in the following instances. The first instance is actually when we speak for what we want and believe it, leading to temporary anxiety and nervousness. The second instance, it's actually when we share how we feel to others. It may leave us vulnerable and may expose our insecurities and fears. The third instance, it's actually when we are taking responsibility for our actions, is difficult and requires a lot of work sometimes. But ultimately, the habit of communicating assertively, of clearly and respectfully expressing your wishes and feelings, leads to the best outcomes in the long run. Speaking of which, here are some of the most important benefits that come from learning to be more assertive. When it comes to the benefits of learning to be more assertive, there are too many to list entirely, but here are a few of the most common and compelling reasons to work on becoming more assertive in your communication. The first benefit of learning to communicate assertively, it's actually when you decrease social anxiety and the need for approval. When one has the skill of expressing his or our own beliefs, wants and needs in direct and respectful manner, we obtain evidence that we don't need to worry on situations such as disapproval. Learning to be assertive is a good way to decrease your social anxiety and the fear of being disappointing to others. The second benefit of learning to communicate assertively, it's actually when you become relaxed and less stressed. Once you learn to implement assertiveness in your communication, then the level of chronic stress and burnout is actually decreased, since it's far more efficient and relaxing way to go about in life. The third benefit of learning to communicate assertively, it's actually when you increase self-confidence and self-respect. If you are avoiding expressing what is important in your life, then the message that you are trying to put across to your brain, it's actually your own wishes and values are not really important, and when consistently it actually diminishes your self-confidence. On the other hand, when you're honest in expressing your feelings about your life, then you're actually telling your brain what is exactly important and valuable, and ultimately that's the source and genuinely self-confidence and self-respect. The fourth benefit of learning to communicate assertively, it's actually when you become less resentful of others. When you rely on three unhelpful styles of communication, that's passive, aggressive, and passive-aggressive communication styles, you tend to project your own disappointment with yourself for not being honest and assertive onto other people in form of chronic frustration and resentment. The fifth benefit of learning to communicate assertively, it's actually when you become better in relationships. It is evident that in all problems that occur in a certain relationship, they usually emerge due to problems that arise from communications. And when narrowing down further, we find that the problem usually arises from the problems of assertiveness. But all this can be avoided only when you start learning to communicate assertively with your spouse or partner. Every aspect of your relationship improves. Assertiveness is more than just a way of communicating. Speaking of assertiveness as a topic of discussion in this video, I would like to introduce 4 types of communication. That's passive communication, aggressive communication, passive-aggressive communication, and assertive communication. When you are actually communicating to people, whether you know it or not, you are using one of these styles. Let's briefly go through each and describe what it looks like and where exactly it's coming from. When it comes to passive style of communication, it's all about keeping your head down and avoiding conflict. It's always about giving in to other people's requests and demands and holding back from expressing your own desires and preferences. Passive communication doesn't mean not to communicate at all and being silent. Instead, passive communication usually takes the form of going along with whatever someone else suggests, despite of not actually wanting to do that. Even as much as passive communication appears passive in terms of what to say, if often anything but passive in terms of what you do. People with passive style of communicating often looking extremely busy and active because they are constantly rushing around and working hard to take care of everyone else's requests. But there are tough consequences in this kind of passive style of communication, since it's a huge source of both chronic stress and burnout. The other form of communication, it's actually aggressive communication. In this style of communication, it's actually the opposite of passive style of communication. Rather than doing it whatever is asked by others, you actually try to force others to do what you want them to do for you. In passive style of communication, you give up unreasonable amount of control over on your own life. But in aggressive style, you are actually trying to create unreasonable amount of control on other people's lives. A consistently aggressive style of communication is almost always response to fear and insecurity. While aggressive communication can feel empowering in short term, because it's an ego boost, the long-term results are never satisfying and often making those feelings of insecurity even worse. A good example is that over time most people who use aggressive communication end up alienating the most important people in their lives and feeling increasingly alone and isolated, which only feeds their insecurity. The third form of communication is actually passive-aggressive communication, which it is a combination of both passive and aggressive style. It's usually an attempt to get your way to express your frustrations and dissatisfactions while simultaneously avoiding responsibility for the consequences. A good example is actually when you gossip or talk badly about other people behind their back. Is a form of passive-aggressive communication where you vent and undermine someone while trying to avoid the consequences of doing it directly. Sarcasm is a form of passive-aggressive communication that lets you get in a jab in at someone but avoiding taking the blame because it was just a joke. Intentionally doing a task poorly so that you won't be asked to do it again in the future is passive-aggressive, since it allows you to get what you want and avoid the discomfort or possible rejection that comes from asking for it directly. Passive-aggressive communication often works in the short term, but almost always leads to poor results in the long run. This is because the people around you eventually become so frustrated and upset with you that it can cause major relationship strife and loss. And because people who regularly use passive-aggressive style understand that they are not being totally honest in the way they relate with other people, chronic guilt and anxiety typically builds over time. When I'm talking about assertive communication, I actually mean that you clearly and respectfully ask for what we want and say no to what we don't want. Many people mistake the directness of assertive communication for rudeness or aggressive communication. Usually, this is because they are trained early on their life to be overly accommodating and differential. Assertiveness is almost always the most effective way of interacting with people because it's an honest expression of how you feel and what's important to you, but also become respectful to others. In other words, assertive communication means respecting yourself and other people in your way of communicating. One way to better understand the four communication styles is to visualize them in terms of the two key dimensions, respecting yourself versus respecting other people. If you think of communication as being either high or low on each of those dimensions, then you end up getting in the four styles of communication. Since we now know the benefits of being assertive, I think it is the high time to know the ways that which enable us to improve the level of assertiveness in our lives. It's the high time to understand that assertiveness is a skill that can be learned and implemented, but it requires time for you to master the skill effectively. In order to start learning how to be assertive, one is supposed to take one step at a time, slowly over time. Don't start by trying to be assertive everywhere and always. Pick one situation in your life where you want to be more assertive, then work on it until when you feel that you are more confident. That is when you can now shift your focus in other areas of your life. The second step to take in order to be more assertive is actually prepare ahead of time. It is also better you prepare ahead of time to be more assertive in a particular situation. Some of the activities that one can do during the preparation is actually writing down your thoughts and what you like to say ideally, since it will help you to be organized in terms of your thoughts and be less anxious leading up to the conversation and also be confident during the conversation. It is also advisable to be smart about what, when, and where you decide to practice assertiveness. The third step to take in order to be more assertive is actually connect assertiveness with your values. It is not easy to be assertive since you are likely to experience resistance from both yourself and even other people. But out of commitment and persistence, you can actually overcome the resistance through motivation and resolve by taking some time to clarify why being assertive really matters to you and how assertiveness will help you realize those values. A good example is actually by setting boundaries at work. For this will help you to lay out your values of being present with your spouse and kids at home. Therefore, make sure to identify and clarify those values around the assertive behavior. The fourth step to take in order to be more assertive is actually making imperfect decisions on your purpose. It occurs sometimes in different situations whereby we have more than one option to choose. Making the right choice, it actually seems difficult, hence making you to move back and forth endlessly between the options, or even end up getting stuck second-guessing the decision that you have made, questioning your judgment and wishing you could go back and take the other option in substitute of the other that you have actually currently been working on. It is advisable to learn to make decisions fast, then change them slowly. This actually makes you to feel more confident and also helps you to avoid wasting time trying to choose in between the options available. The fifth step in order to be more assertive is actually stop apologizing when you haven't done anything wrong. In most cases, we usually apologize because we are uncomfortable with the fact that someone else is uncomfortable. We usually try to make things better and relieve the discomfort of the situation. The alternative to this is just stop. Other people's emotions are neither your responsibility nor something you can control. The sixth step in order to be more assertive is actually understand how to set good boundaries. In case someone asks you for a favor that it's actually not reasonable and contributes nothing in value and to you, then simply decline and say no. Since when you accept the favor, you're going to feel uncomfortable afterwards, and that the whole point is to build up your tolerance for that discomfort. The seventh step to take in order to be more assertive is actually stop trying to manage how other people feel. Instead of offering solution to trying to do things so that you can make people feel better, just acknowledge that they are going to have a hard time and leave it at that point. The principles that actually require to be a good listener and also validate their emotions but don't take their responsibilities. Even as much as you'll be practicing to be more assertive, you will experience uncomfortable feelings just like other people around you used to you when you are less assertive. And that's why I have decided to provide you with an extra bonus content for you, which actually is watch out for fake guilt. In your endeavor of being assertive, you are likely to fall off assertiveness wagon and end up proceeding into old habits. Feeling guilty is not the same as being guilty. Many people, especially those with passive style of communicating, have a hard time being assertive because we worry about how guilty we feel as a result of not going along with other people wants from us. But remember, keep in mind that there is a very huge difference of actually being guilty and also feeling guilty. Guilt is simply an emotion that can be experienced when you have done something wrong, not when somebody else says or implies that you have done something wrong. Try to recognize the two versions of guilty. When you find yourself feeling guilty, ask yourself, have I actually done something wrong? Then practice tolerating the discomfort of that fake guilt, usually comes from the fear of sadness, and building up resilience to it. Well, my friends, I'm so grateful for making it up to this point in this video. For now, you have actually learned something very important. Then you start practicing starting from today, and your life will actually transform positively. And also be generous enough to share the video to each and everyone whom you know. And if you really found the video worth your time, then take this opportunity to show gratitude by clicking the like button. And in case you are new in this YouTube channel, then we mainly discuss about entrepreneurship, business, sales, marketing, motivation, and even life skills. In case you're interested in any of these topics, then click the subscribe button so that you will be the first to get notified once I upload a new video. As for now, goodbye.